We do have a couple dozen people on this training, so it'll be helpful if we keep that chatter to a minimum. You're welcome to come off mute at any point to ask a question or type a question in the chat, and my team will stop what we're doing and we'll address your question. Otherwise, please do stay on mute, and then we'll have time at the end as well to answer questions. Could we just quickly introduce ourselves? And I will start. My name is Ben Weinstein. I am a Senior Project Management Specialist on the VCIF team. Many of you I've interacted with already, so it's nice to see you all here in this training. Jesse, why don't you go next?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jessica Cleveland. I am an assistant director here at the Office of Criminal Justice Programs. I am over the Special Projects Unit, which holds the VCIF, Violent Crime Intervention Fund initiative, as well as the EBP, Evidence-Based Programming in the Jails project. So I'm so happy that you all have joined us this morning and really appreciate your time and look forward to hearing any questions that you all have. So thanks.
Oh yeah, and can we kick it to Amy? And Amy, you can choose who comes next then.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Curley, and I am a project management specialist for the VCIF. Kate?
Good morning. My name is Kate Kotras, and I am a project management specialist for the VCIF team. Jackie?
Hello, I am Jackie Nodell. I am one of the new project management specialists, and I just started about 3 weeks ago, so I'm learning here with everyone.
Thanks, Jackie. So again, at any point, if you have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat or interject. As we go through this training, we will be also dropping links in the chat, and this training will be recorded and we'll also make it available to you, the PowerPoint available to you afterwards. So let's get started. So there are several reports for VCIF, and for the agencies that are on this call, these are only agencies who had funds to spend in your grant contract prior to July 1st. So if you had funds in your contract, you will have to report, and those reports cover the period of time from the beginning of your contract through the end of fiscal year 23 or June 30th, 2023. The reports will all be due on July 31st, which is a Monday, a couple weeks from now. There are 3 reports, and we're going to go through all of them. Most of you, and if not all of you, will only have to do the top 2 reports. That is the annual report that everyone will have to do, and then there's the program income summary report that all of you will have to do. There is also a quarterly report that almost none of you will have to do that I'll talk about in a little bit. So I don't want you all to freak out that there's this extra report. Most of you will only be doing the top 2 reports. So let's talk about those reports now, starting with the annual report. First, just want to let you know, if you lose this PowerPoint and you lose all the links that we're going to send you, all these reports are available on our website, on the OCJP website. If you just go to the reporting tab under grants, you'll see a little VCIF tab, and you can access all those reports there. There's also a QR code on the screen that will take you there. But we're going to send you all the links to all the reports. You do not ever need to go to this page. There's a lot of information on this page. You can just go directly to the reports, fill them out, submit them, and your job is done. So the annual report is the main report that you all will fill out. It is required for every agency. It is due July 31st. And I believe that Kate will be dropping a link to that report in the chat. You are welcome to click on that right now and save it to your whatever web browser you're using for later. I'm going to show you a little bit about how that report works here in a second. But the main thing I just want to get across is that you are encouraged to save your progress as you go along. It does not save automatically. That save button is at the very, very bottom of the page, and I'm going to show you about how that works here in a second. It generates a link that you have to save, and you can use it to come back later to this report. But highly encourage you to save your progress as you're going along. I think we've all been there where we fill out reports or forms online and then our progress is lost and it's very frustrating. So I'm going to cover a lot of this information as we're looking at the actual report. So I'm going to exit the PowerPoint here and just pull up that report.
Can I say one quick thing, Ben, to just maybe
Please.
set the table just a little bit? So what Ben's about to go into, which is the annual report, this is just our best effort at getting an idea of the work that you've started to do with this money. We know that it is so super early in the lifespan of these projects, and we by no means are expecting you all to have accomplished great things in the big 3 or even 2 or even 1 month that you have had this grant executed. But if you had any money at all in your fiscal year 23 budget, we do want to know what you spent that money on so that we can report that information up to our stakeholders. So of course, these are state funds. This is state money that came out of the state's budget and was allocated by the legislature. And so we have folks in Governor Lee's office, as well as folks in the legislature who are deeply interested in what this money is going toward and how this money is going to lead to, safer communities and you all being able to combat violent crime in your communities. And so we by no means have these like grand expectations for what we're going to get in this first little bit of reporting, since this is all so new, but that's what's behind all of this. So this is just asking the little bit of money that you had in your fiscal year 23 budget. What have you been able to do so far with that? But don't feel pressure to have somehow accomplished all the things that you laid out in your project design. We know that the real work mostly hasn't even started yet, and that's 100% okay. So just as much accuracy and completeness of information as you can put into these reports will help us then communicate just the beginning success and progress that you all are seeing up to, our stakeholders, which are the governor's office and the legislature. Thanks, Ben. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that context. And to just kind of crystallize that for you, the first thing you see on this report is the reporting period. And so this is only covering, this is the state fiscal year. So from July 1st of last year to June 30th of 2023. And so the only activities that you are including in this report are the activities that occurred during this time span. And of course, everyone's contract started well after this July 1st date. So nothing should be reported prior to the beginning of your contract date. This is just kind of the only option for you to select here. As I said, saving your progress as you go, that's what these instructions are for. The link will work for the next 30 days. Obviously, the report is due well before that, but that's what this information up here is for. Okay, so this annual report, for everyone on this call right now who is listening to my voice, you will only be selecting the formula grant option here for this report. Even if you have a collaborative grant and that grant may have started already at this point, we are not asking you to report on that at all. We're only asking you right now to report on your formula grant because that is the only grant that you would have that is effective or that started before the end of the last fiscal year. So you're selecting formula grant here. Please enter your implementing agency name. So that is different from maybe the name of the entity on your contract. Your contract probably includes, or most definitely includes, the name of the jurisdiction, the city or the town or the county that the contract is with, and we call that the authorizing agency, but we are asking you to put in the name of your law enforcement agency, so your police department or your sheriff's office here. Please put in the name of the person who is filling this report out and their demographic information, or their contact information, excuse me, not their demographic information. And then here's where the report actually starts. Section 2 asks you to identify the outputs that you are tracking for your grant. that were laid out in the scope that is part of your grant contract. As the instructions say here, these can be found in section E of your VCIF scope. So the Word document that you all worked on, that is part of your contract, it is at the very end of your contract, right before your budget documents. Section E includes the outputs that you said you would track for this grant, and that is what we're asking you to fill out here in this section. We tried our best to capture all the types of outputs that we saw across all the many contracts that we've been working on. We are sure that this does not capture everything, but please do read these carefully and try to see if your outputs fall into these categories. If you have a question about whether your outputs fall into one of these categories, reach out to your project management specialist. And that goes for any question about this report. If you see that there is something that is unclear or you're unsure how to fill it out, please just reach out to your project management specialist who is identified in your contract. If you can't find that any of your outputs belong here, we do have this other category down here at the bottom where you would type them in. All these checkboxes have a logic in this form, because as you can see, section 2 starts here and then it immediately goes to section 3, but this is a required question. And so when you click any of these, you'll see a question appear down here. When you click multiple additional questions will appear. All of these questions, once you select that box, are required for you to answer. So for example, many of you are buying equipment. If you had equipment purchases in your fiscal year 23 budget, you will be checking this box and telling us how many different types of equipment were purchased. You will use these arrows up here to tell us how many different types were purchased. And for each number you click, another line of this question will appear. And it's asking for the type of equipment, the number of those pieces of equipment that you bought, the number of pieces of equipment, and then how much each item was. And you can adjust, type that quantity in here and type the amount here. And I'm not sure, this might be something we have to fix, Jesse. I think this cell is off a little bit, but this is what it should look like, where you're typing in the purchase amount. And this is not what you, all of these answers are what you actually accomplished. So the actual numbers that happened during this reporting period, not the projected numbers or the numbers that are in the budget or in section E. This is what you actually purchased during the reporting period.
Yeah, so just as an example, a lot of you have like batches of equipment. So say you said you were going to buy like 25 tasers. A lot of you wrote those budgets, months ago. And so maybe now that it was time to purchase it, you ended up only needing 20 tasers. Maybe the cost went up slightly, so you could only afford 20 instead of the 25. We have your budget. We have your scope. We're not asking you to repeat that information. We're asking what you actually spent money on. All of these questions, all of this information is about where the money went, where you actually spent money. So if you bought 20 tasers, if you'll scroll down, Ben, you'll click that equipment box. This field will come up, the type or description. You'll put the taser. If you want to put the model, the brand name, you're welcome to do that. The number would be 20, and then the per unit cost would go in that field. So that's what that should look like. And then if you also bought, 20 pieces of body armor, that would be another row, and you would put body armor 20 and the unit cost. If you bought two things that are similar but different, like a lot of you have mobile radios, but also car radios, that would be two different things, right? If they're listed separately in your budget, you'd report those separately. If it starts to get a little gray with how to kind of break something out, feel free to contact your project management specialist and say, how do you guys want this? Do you want me to break all this up into a million pieces, or can we just batch all this together? This is the first time we're doing this for all of us. So feel free to call and we can think through that together. But roughly, this is how that should look. And you're welcome again to use your budget and your scope as kind of a to remember how you sort of broke it out the first time. You're welcome to report it the way that it's described in your budget and scope. But if, say, you also had 10 laptops that you were going to purchase this year and you didn't because supply chain meant that you couldn't get them in time, and so you're not going to be able to purchase those under 23, you won't report that here, even if it's in your budget. If you didn't spend that money before July 1st, you are not going to put that in this report. You're not going to get in trouble. There's not going to be some repercussion. Not some red flag isn't going to go up for us. We want your honest and complete reporting here of what you actually spent money on.
And we're using spent money here to refer to these outputs because that is what many of you, that's the bulk of what you said you would do. There are also checkboxes here because this is section E. This is what you told us. These are the things we're going to track. There are other options here that are not about spending money, but about conducting trainings or engaging the community via hosting events, conducting investigations with VCIF funding, identifying hotspots. All of these were things that you could count, and many of you said you would count. And so that's why they're here. We wanted to know, okay, of the things that you said in your scope, these are the things we want to count, these outputs. What happened? Just let us know what happened. And so just be careful adjusting this number. We don't want you to enter things and then go down one and then it deletes one of your entries, right? So just be careful with this, these buttons right here. And also just be mindful of what the line is asking you to enter. If you have multiple buttons selected, there's going to be multiple sections, and you just have to make sure you're looking and seeing what you're typing into. Because here, I have these first three selected, 2 types of equipment, and then that equipment list is down here. Some of these other questions are up here about hiring positions, number of hours funded, right? That's for the salary staff being entered. That's what these questions look like. So just be mindful of what section you're typing into. Another thing I want to mention here with the equipment is when you're typing the amount, you can just type the numbers. You don't have to type this the $sign or anything. I mean, it's not going to mess it up, but you can just give us the per unit numbers here. If you select other because your output is not represented, it's going to ask you to describe what that other was, and so you will put what you were counting and then the number that you ended up, whatever that was, what actually happened during the grant period. Any questions about this section here before I move on? This is the big part of this report, so if anything's coming up for you, I'd like to pause here and really make sure that everyone is clear on this. One thing I think I didn't mention is that in the budget, there are 2 places, right, where you could have had equipment purchases. There was the supplies line, which was for items with a unit cost under 5,000, and the capital line with the items with a unit cost over 5,000. They will both be captured in this equipment output. So that is capital and supplies, any items that you bought. Okay. If there aren't, oh, and let me also add here, violent crime statistics based on target crimes in A2 of contract scope. This is only if you said you were going to track violent crime statistics. If this is something you said in the scope, we want to track the increase in, or the decrease in, hopefully not the increase, the decrease in some sort of violent crime that you're measuring, then you would select this. Tell us what type of crime that was, and then tell us the number of cases that you were tracking during that period. You're not selecting this just because you described crimes in section A2, which all of you did. That's not what this is for. Okay. Now, the next section is similar in that you are going to look at your scope and see, look at your scope to see what you would put here in this section of the report. This is asking you the progress you made towards the actual activities and objectives you said you were going to do with VCIF funds. So a lot of times they are similar to the outputs that you are tracking, but they're a little bit different here. You might remember in section B of the scope, we asked you to identify goals, objectives, and activities. And so in this section of the report, we want you to tell us how many goals you said you were going to work towards in that section, in section B of your scope. You will select the number of goals, and for each one, you will answer these two questions. So what progress has your agency made towards the goals? I guess there are two sections of questions. What progress have you made, and what actions did you take during the reporting period? So if you had a goal in your scope, and that is not something that you either were planning to do or were able to do. I'm sorry, excuse me, let me back up a second. If you had a goal in your scope that you were doing after the end of this fiscal year, maybe you wanted to do it in FY24, you will still put it here and you will say, we did not take any action towards this. We plan to do this in the next fiscal year, right? So this is capturing every single goal that you had in your scope document. And that's why Jesse was saying earlier, we're not trying to track things that didn't happen up here. You will let us know kind of how things are going down here. So that's the first section here for each goal. And the second section for each goal is what maybe prevented you from achieving this goal, or what made it difficult, or just what are some of the complicating factors going on here. We obviously understand the VCIF grant is not the only thing going on in your agencies, and so especially with purchases, we understand that there are certain things that are outside of your control, and we want to know kind of if that affected you, how that affected you. Jesse, did you want to say anything else about this section?
Only just to remind y'all that we know it is very, very early in this project, so you don't have to write a novel here. We would expect maybe one of the goals to be maybe like partially have progress toward it, maybe if one of the goals is like better communication with, other agencies, and part of fulfilling that is maybe this massive records management system, but also like the purchase of some computers so that you can access that records management system. And so far, all you've done is purchase the computers. That's fine. That's totally fine. So we're not looking for you to rehash all this stuff or get really verbose. This does not have to be poetry. We're just asking for kind of a picture, like a status update. The people who are reading these are us. It's not a robot. It's just us who are reading, especially these text fields. This is just going to be us like reading this text. So you don't have to go to this great detail. You can do bullets if you want to, whatever just feels easiest to get the information out and just be concise. You could say, especially to Ben's point, if a lot of these goals are more for fiscal year 24 or even 25, you can just say FY24, and that's totally fine. So don't feel like you have to burn like a ton of time explaining, why you haven't done a lot on a grant that is like 2 months old. That's completely understandable.
Yeah, great point. That said, a lot of the goals were big picture, and that's what we're counting here. They might have one objective that you were doing, and that included purchasing something with funds in FY23, and another objective that includes something with funds for FY24, right? So this is where you would explain that a little bit. and report on what you were accomplishing and what you are not yet accomplishing or not yet trying to accomplish. Any questions about this section 3 of the report before we move on? Okay. So that's the end of section 3. It's just 2 questions per goal. This is the last section of the report. Mercifully, it is just a multiple choice, right? We still, even though it is very straightforward, we really do want you all to let us know what effect this grant is having on your community. So please do take this seriously. We are trying to gather the information from you all on the ground so that we can, as Jesse said, report it up to the state legislature and let them know, what impact are these funds having? And so this is more not about you telling us, were you able to do the things you said in your scope and budget, but your personal assessment of how well that's going. So has VCI funding empowered your agency to better combat violent crime? They're all on a scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. VCI funds are helping keep your community safer. VCI funds are helping keep law enforcement safer while you do your jobs. And VCI funds are helping strengthen relationships between law enforcement and your community. You are welcome to fill these questions in out of order. If you want to start with the easy ones first and you feel like you already know how you want to answer these, sometimes it's easier to get these out of the way ahead of time. That's fine. Please make sure you are saving your progress. And the way you do that is you just click here, save and get link. And here is your link. So if you copy that link here, you can save it, or you can type in your email address and then click this button and it will send you the link for later. Okay, any questions on this part or anything related to the annual report? Okay, great.
So just before we move on, just to reiterate what Ben said, if you're in this meeting, that report is required for you because you had money in your 23 budget. So no matter what you ended up doing with that money, that annual report is required for your agency and it is due at the end of July. So if you have questions about that, please let us know, but this should be on your list. It shouldn't take too long, especially because there's not been a ton of activity for most of you all. But if you have questions or concerns about your ability to complete the report on time, please communicate those as soon as possible with your project management specialist, and we will do everything that we can. We'll sit with you while you complete it. We'll answer any questions that you have. We want to make this as easy a process as possible. This is just us being accountable for these funds to the other stakeholders in the state. So we appreciate your time on that one.
And we understand that there is not a ton of time in the grand scheme to complete this. Maybe you've had other grants that have longer timelines for reporting, but we try to keep this report as simple as possible because we understand that this is not the only thing going on in your lives and there's not a ton of time to complete it. So please, yeah, we understand if you do need to reach out, please do reach out to your project management specialist. So the slides here will kind of go over what I just showed you on this website. So I'm going to skip through here. Again, when you're doing this, you're telling us what you actually did, not what you planned to do. Okay, I want to talk now. Actually, I might skip this one for a second and talk about the program income summary report. This is also required. I believe, Jesse, this is also required for all agencies, correct?
It is required for all agencies. It is the easiest report you will ever do for OCJP because What this report is asking is, did any of the programming that you are funding using this money, did any of that generate income? The answer for all of you is going to be no, it did not. There is no reason that you would ever generate income from any of this violent crime programming that you're doing. This is a report, we fund nonprofits, we fund trainings, we fund all sorts of different types of agencies and programs across the state. And so some of our processes, have to satisfy like a big, broad set of needs. This is one of those things. But for you all, there is absolutely no reason you would be generating income from any of this programming. And so you don't have to do it sometimes it's called a quarterly program income summary report, because if you do generate income, you have to report on it every quarter, but you won't do that because you won't be generating any income. So you're literally once a year going to go into this report, put in your little information, click no, and be done with it forever. It is a series of motions you have to go through. As a project director, it'll just be something that you do. If you pass this off to someone at any point and they have questions or concerns that they need to, talk to us about, we can do that. But this is just something that you'll go in and complete and be done with it once a year. So.
Yes, it is due the same day as the annual report. And I think Kate, if she hasn't already, is dropping a link to this report directly in the chat. It is also available, again, on our website if you go to the reporting page, but you can just use this link and go right there. There are a couple of things, and as Jesse was saying, this is more for OCJP's other grants where there might be income generated, and so this is not as customized to VCIF as the annual report is. So that's why there are these instructions here. Under project title, you're going to type in VCIF formula grant. You're going to type in your contract number. And if you don't know what that is, if you don't have that, please reach out to your project management specialist. And then under fund source, there's a drop-down menu here. Everything else is self-explanatory, so I'm just pointing out these three areas that may not be. You won't even see VCIF as an option here, so you'll just select other. And this is one page. It is just you typing in basically who you are, and as Jesse said, selecting no, that your project did not generate income, and then you're done with this and you submit it. If you get stuck or you need any questions answered, someone from our team or your project management specialist can answer that question. Any questions on this one? All right, I'm going to go back 2 slides and talk about the quarterly subcontract report. This is not required for all agencies. It is due the same day, July 31st. And this one has a little bit of nuance to it, and I'm sure I'm not going to capture everything. So Jesse, please jump in. This is a report that is requested by the legislature, who want to know if your agency is passing any money or any equipment through to another entity, another law enforcement partner or a nonprofit. If any of this money that is going to you is then also going to someone else in some way, we want to capture that with this report. This is a very straightforward report, and all they are asking is, what entity are you passing that equipment or that money through to, and how much money over the course of your contract are you passing to them? That's it. You don't have to talk about the project in any way. There's no narrative here, except it just says the purpose of the subcontract. So you'll just say passing equipment through for X agency, right? It is very straightforward. It is also one page. And I'm confident in saying that very few of you who are on this call right now will have to fill this out, if any. If you think that you might have to fill out this report, our recommendation is to go ahead and fill it out. It won't take you very long. Again, it's just are you passing equipment or money through to another entity for the purpose of providing some sort of service or program? If you think that you're doing that, fill out this report, and you can also reach out to us and ask that question. This is not for an agency. If you just have some money in your professional fees or subcontract line in your budget, or you're paying a Axon to store body camera data, you will not fill out this report. This is more for the legislature to know if money is being used kind of to support the law enforcement project in a way that isn't. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but in a way that you wouldn't already normally be doing kind of with your regular duties as a law enforcement agency.
Yeah. So the distinction is, if you're paying someone like a company for, a license or something, if you're renting equipment, if you are buying a database, something like that, then that's just you purchasing something. If you're passing money or equipment to another law enforcement agency, like a lot of you are buying radios or buying equipment and then giving some of that to, like if you're a county and you're buying a handful of equipment, you're peeling some of that off and you're giving that to maybe a small city that's within your county. You're giving some of that equipment to that partner law enforcement agency. You would report that here. If you are peeling off a little bit of your money to pass to a community organization to do some training out in the community, you would report that here. If you're paying someone to install Wi-Fi, that's not something that the legislature needs deeper information on. What they want to know is if any of this money is not going to the straightforward entity that it looks like on paper. If we're giving all this money and equipment to an agency, but then they're actually peeling some of that off and giving it to someone else to do something with, this is to capture that. So we know that there are like gray areas of that, because maybe Crime Stoppers is that just some vendor, or is that kind of a partnership that is ongoing and is going to yield some kind of service to the community? That's a gray area. We don't have an answer for that. We're going to all find out together whether the legislature cares about that information. For right now, we're erring on the side of, if we're not sure, let's report on it and let's give that information up. And then after this first test group, because there's only 17 of you all, we'll find out, hopefully we'll get some feedback to see whether they really care about some of that, grayer stuff, or if really what they wanted to know is like, nah, we just want to know if you're giving money to a nonprofit, if you're giving money or equipment to a partner law enforcement agency. Another example would be if you're buying a bunch of forensic equipment and a bunch of stuff, and maybe some of that's going to like the DA's office, or some of that's going to a DTF. And they're still within your jurisdiction, but it's just a kind of different office within your jurisdiction. I'd go ahead and report on that too. I'd go ahead and say, yeah, we bought, a bunch of really flashy equipment to do some really upgraded investigations, and we're going to share some of that with the DTF, with the drug task force that we have here. And we're going to hand it over to them, and then they're going to do some of their work with that. And that's all described in your scope because of the link between, the opioid epidemic and violent crime in your community. And so that would be captured here. And you would just say, this is the money, this is the agency, and this is the purpose. And with all of these, you might hopefully be seeing a common thread between this report and the annual report with the scope. We would hope that when you sit down, especially the first time to look at your annual report or to do this quarterly report, that you would have your scope next to you. You can print it out and just have it on your desk next to you, because you're going to be referencing, you're not supposed to just be making this stuff up all over again. Reference that language that you used that's in that final contract, that's in that scope document. If you're sitting here right now thinking, I don't know where the most up-to-date version of that might be, ask us and we'll send you another copy of your executed contract. It's going to be right in there. You can check out section B, you can check out section E, you can check out your outputs. You can look in your scope to see where you talked about passing money off to another agency. Just steal all that language and put it in this report. That is 100% fine with regard to the purpose, with regard to any of those descriptors. We expect you to be mirroring what you had, in your scope. You don't need to like try to rewrite some of this. So this is gray. We understand that it is, but sorry, I just saw a comment come through. But we're going to learn together with that quarterly equipment. So you're going to do this if you're passing anything off, you're going to do this every quarter. We are going to be actively seeking feedback from the legislature to say, is this helpful? Is this looking like what you want it to look like? And we're going to be, wherever possible, paring that down to make it as easy for you all as possible. A comment just came through asking that they don't see their project management specialist in the income summary report. That sounds like, and I saw when you said, Ben, like that our fund source isn't on there. That was all supposed to be fixed before this reporting date. We'll see if we can get all that updated like today. We're supposed to have all your project management specialists in there, and we're supposed to have our fund source listed in there too, so you don't have to select other. But we'll see if we can get that fixed for you all, so that we can get so that you're not fishing around for another project management specialist in there, because that could be very confusing if everyone's not all listed in there. So thank you for pointing that out, and we'll check it out.
So this is going to reference the subcontract quarterly report is going to reference that this includes the competitive collaborative enhancement grants. Again, this is just capturing a contract that you had with funds in FY23. So some of you on this call will have one of these grants. We're not asking you to report on that for July 31st, by July 31st. This is about your formula grant that had money in it in FY23. When you get to this report, you'll see a box up here to ask if your information has changed. This is the first report, so you'll want to check that. But moving forward, if everything is still the same, then you wouldn't check this. And this is just to give us an alert if this information, if we need to be communicating with a different person, or if something with your actual funds the use of your funds have changed since you last filed the report. Same thing with this section of the report. It's going to ask, do you have a subcontract? If you think you need to fill out this report, whether or not you have a subcontract, you will click yes. This is our best effort to try to capture what we thought would be the use of funds through a subcontract, but that might be a little bit different, as Jesse was explaining. If you're passing equipment through that does not involve a subcontract, to fill out this form, you need to click yes to get the actual form to show the questions to answer. So this is the name of the agency that you're working with to pass that money or equipment through, and the amount or the value of what you're passing, their address, what counties they're in. You can select multiple counties if you hold down the control button, and then the purpose is here. If you're doing this with more than one agency, you would then select yes here for the second field to pop up, and you can also make that go away. Any questions? I've mostly pulled this up to show you how short this is. Just so you can see, it's not a big deal. And we will, just like the annual report, we will sit with you and help you fill this out if you need that support from us. Happy to. Any questions about the quarterly subcontract reporting report? And if anything comes up and occurs to you later, we'll have time again at the end here for questions.
Yeah, they're asking if you can go back to the income summary report to show what's actually, maybe you need to zoom in a little bit on that.
Let me go.
What you're actually reporting.
Yeah, let me go to that report. So you're putting VCIF formula grants, you're putting your grant for contract number here. You're filling out who's completing this report and what agency you're from. You're choosing the fund source. So I guess we're going to try to get this updated so you'll see VCIF, but if you don't and you want to fill this out, you can select other and we'll know because you put it in the project title. And then here you're saying, does your program have income to report? No. Fiscal year 2023. And then your contact information. And this is for both personnel on the grant. So who is the financial director for the grant and who is the project director for the grant? And that's it. Yeah, thanks for asking that. Any other questions on this one?
Something that floated through the chat, so I'll just, if a couple people thought it, and it's possible that a lot of people would. So if you'll scroll back up, Ben, where it asks for program manager, a couple people thought that meant the designated project director for your agency. That's not what that's asking. That question is asking for the OCJP staff person that's assigned to your grant. So it would be Ben, it would be Amy, it would be Kate or Jackie. And like I said, we're going to get those names added in there, but they're not asking for the name of your, like who your project director is. You know, someone said like Dale Ward is our project director. You'll enter that information in like a text field down at the bottom, like Ben just showed, but that drop down is asking who your designated staff person is. The reason it's asking that question, just so you know, is because that tells the report where to send it to once you click submit. That's the functionality of that question. If you select Ben's name on that drop down, then when you submit that report, it's going to email that report to Ben. That's the whole reason that question is there, so it knows who to email. You guys are our guinea pigs. There are 17 of you because you're all who has money in your fiscal year 23 budgets. For 24, there are going to be so many hundreds of you. So if you, just as we're going through this, I'm just seeing places where I feel like it could be, maybe not, maybe it won't be a big deal, maybe it will be a pain point. If you would be so kind as you're maneuvering through these reports, if you would just diplomatically document your pain points. If you hit somewhere where you're like, this is unreasonable, this is too difficult, we could not find this piece of information, this was confusing, please don't feel like you can't share that with us. Please actually do throw that in an email and send it to me or to Ben or to anyone else on the VCIF team, because we want this to be, we have to get some of this information. We have to be compliant, but we also don't want to drag 270 agencies through a needlessly complicated or convoluted process if there's a better way. So as you're going through this over the next couple of weeks, please feel free to share any pain points or recommendations about what would have made this process easier for you, especially with regard to questions that are asked or how questions are asked, so that we can improve those for fiscal year 24 when there are just literally, 20 times more of you than there are now. We really appreciate you all's patience with this. This is a brand new project for our office, and we're building it, as we go, with a lot of stakeholders involved. And so we really appreciate you all's time on this. I'm also reading, says, do we need to wait for our program manager to be added before we submit the report? No, you don't have to. All these reports go to one central place anyway, and we can go get your report. So like I said, that question is just so that it knows who to notify that, this agency has submitted their report. It sends an email to whoever you select. Like he has me highlighted there. If you select me, it'll come to me. So if in the meantime, if you want to select me, that is 100% fine. And if you see, other as the fund source, that's fine too. No, you don't have to wait for that in order to just get this report out of the way. That's totally fine. And we'll try to get it all fixed up, certainly by next reporting period, but we'll see how fast they can get it fixed in the meantime. But no, feel free to go ahead and do it. That's a good question.
And it looks like Ben is not on that drop-down list.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they're saying is the VCIF fund source has not really been input into that particular report yet, but we're hoping to do that today.
That whole report needs, we communicated some of that, but it has fiscal year 20 as an option on the drop-down, right? Just let's click refresh on that bad boy. So we'll work on that for you guys.
Want to try to get you guys out of here in a reasonable time. So I'm just going to quickly go over this stuff. This should not be new information, but this is really the role of the project director. I think Kate will also be putting in the chat a link to our grants manual, which describes more information about all the roles for the personnel on your grants. But the project director is the person who is the main point of contact and primarily responsible for making sure that the activities in the grant contract are being completed and then filling out the report, unless they want to delegate that, but they're responsible for making sure it gets submitted, and then maintaining communication with our team, with your designated project management specialist. If that person is changing or that person has changed since you got your contract that was executed and sent to you, these three individuals are mentioned in the contract. If they are different people now that need to be in these roles, the way to let us know that is to notify us directly via email within 10 days of that change. Please make sure that you are doing that, that the three people on this contract know that that is a requirement. And please let us know via email, not just by putting it in the report when you fill out the report. Because we document this in your grant file that we have, as well as in our database where we keep the most up-to-date records.
Yeah, our office sends correspondence that doesn't necessarily come from our team. We have a quality assurance unit that deals with compliance. We have a training arm that sends out blasts of information about required trainings. They are pulling the contacts for all those emails from our database. And if we have old information in that database because your project director left 2 months ago and you haven't told us, or your authorized official stepped down and a new person was elected and you haven't notified us, that's all going to a dead email. And you're still on the hook for the information that was included in that email. So that's why we have this requirement. If your authorized official, if your project director, or if your financial director changes, that is 100% fine. It happens all the time. You've got to throw that in a quick email to us and notify us within 10 days of that change. We might follow up and say, could we get a little bit more information about that? But as long as you email us and say, hey, our project director is different now, heads up, within 10 days, then you're good. This is something that could result in a finding down the line when you're monitored. This is just not something we want to just like find out incidentally. So just maybe make a little, note on your desk or something if that happens, to just, when you can, within 10 days, reach out to us in writing and let us know that change has happened, and you'll be all good. So this is a really important piece to make sure that we can stay in touch with you about the really important information that we have to share.
And this little dinosaur QR code will take you to the part of our website that describes these roles, so you can discuss with your team who makes the most sense to be in this role, who is most, especially for the project director, who is the most available to really be overseeing this grant and communicating with our office. Just last reminder is this would have been on the orientation training as well that you hopefully attended a couple of months ago, but and Kate will be dropping the links to our grants manual and our fund source chapter, which are on our website. This is a great place to start if you have a question. There are frequently asked questions there, descriptions of what costs are allowable or unallowable, which at this point should be pretty clear on that with what's in your contract, as well as the reporting is on here. The project management specialists that you've been working with are all listed here as well. That is the end of our training. So thank you all for hanging on. We got 1 minute to spare, but we'll hang out here for a little bit. If any other questions are popping up, you're welcome to come off mute if you want to ask a question. I know there was at least one or a couple of people maybe on the phone. So I will send out this training. If there is someone on your team that you want to share this with or share the recording with, we'll send that out. And otherwise, yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to let us know at this point. We'll hang out here for a little bit, but thank you.
If you haven't yet, please put your name and especially the agency, your name and your title and the agency that you represent. I was going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So far, I only have 8 agencies accounted for, but that doesn't count the folks on the phone. So if you're calling in, there's no way for you to put it in the chat. So please email Ben as soon as you can to let him know that you did attend, because the agencies that are not accounted for, obviously we'll have to reach out and make sure that they get this information, as this is a required training. So, okay, great. You guys are starting to throw those in there. Thank you guys. Good job.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder, Jesse.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording, Ben.
Okay.